A second chance. 2 years later, I found an opportunity to contribute to the public good in the lighting industry, where new LED technology was being used to reduce our global energy consumption and improve the lighting quality in buildings. There was an important and subtle shift in my mindset that took place when starting this new business. Previously, the engineer in me thought I needed to invent a new technology. In the case of LED lighting, the technology was already invented. I found myself in a new role where my job was to promote the technology, educate people about it, and develop a financial mechanism to make this expensive new technology accessible to everyone. To be clear, though my engineering background helped me to understand how the technology worked, the problem to be solved in this business was not an engineering problem. The problem was in marketing, education, and finance. This unchained me from the requirement to engineer something and freed me up to realize I had other skills and value to contribute to the world. My business partners were more savvy about finance than I was, and they found out about an effective financial model being used for other energy-efficient technologies like solar panels. The way it worked is that we'd offer commercial buildings zero out-of-pocket lighting retrofits. This means we would go to buildings that already had old, inefficient light bulbs and offer to install the new LED lights for free, and when their energy bill went down, we'd get paid back out of the savings over time. Though this business was more successful than the biotech company I started, it was a serious roller coaster ride that furthered the evolution in my personal development. Specifically, there were two key events which occurred towards the end of my time with the LED lighting company, which caused me to finally shift my priorities away from technology and toward education. The first key event happened after we replaced the old lights in one of my business partners' house with energy-efficient LEDs. He was the epitome of the stereotypical old, white-skinned, gray-haired businessman who focuses most of his conversations around money. I was really turned off by this obsession with money, but genuinely believed that surrounding myself with people like this would be an asset to the company, since my previous business failed and consisted of just me and a classmate who were both inexperienced and engineering-minded. About a month after the LEDs were installed in his house, he enthusiastically shared with me, "The new lights are great. My energy bill went down so much, I just leave the lights on all the time." A single thought entered my mind. Fuck you. I couldn't believe it. I thought of the time and energy put in by the scientists who worked for decades to discover how LEDs could produce light from a microchip using a fraction of the energy required by incandescent, halogen, or fluorescent light bulbs. I thought of the engineers who designed a way to apply these scientific phenomenon to create actual LED lamps, which could be used in buildings. I thought of the labor that went into mining the precious metals around the world to make LED chips. I thought of the laborers in Asian factories assembling the components to make the finished lamps. I thought of the resources it took to transport the finished products on boats across the Pacific Ocean to the United States. I thought of the time and effort that salespeople put into promoting the technology, educating the public, and selling them to property owners. I thought of the contractors who installed the LEDs in buildings. We are talking about countless people devoting serious resources to reducing energy consumption, all in the name of saving the world. It dismayed me to realize that all this human capital working on new technology was wasted by people using technology carelessly. Even more so, all these resources could have been saved if instead we just got everyone to turn off their lights when they're not in the room. I realized that developing new technology wasn't enough. If people's priorities were money over public good, they would purchase a product to save them money, but not consider the role it played in the public welfare. My intuition told me the underlying issue in creating this distorted value system was related to education. Education started appearing to be a field more worthy of my attention than technology. The second key event happened a couple months later when our company, American Relight, acquired another company, MSI Lighting. This was a major accomplishment and should have been a time to celebrate. Instead, my business partners decided I was no longer needed and kicked me out of the company. This happened the day after I signed the contracts, giving up my ownership in my original company and any decision-making power I had. I was devastated. I had heard about greed and deceit in business, but this was my first experience witnessing it firsthand. I really believed in this altruistic vision of solving our energy crisis and improving the living conditions inside of buildings using LEDs, but was surrounded by people who just saw dollar signs. Our interests and values were not aligned at all. While I thought I was making a wise decision of partnering up with a lot of older, experienced entrepreneurs, I now realized how naive I was to think that any of them had interests aside from filling their pockets. It was my fault for getting involved with these kinds of people in the first place, thinking somehow my altruism could balance out their self-interest. I wondered, how could people behave like this? Doesn't anyone give a damn about the rest of the world? When I looked for a root cause of this cultural epidemic, I once again looked at our education system's competitive and achievement-focused culture as the origin of the misalignment of values and pervasive greed in our society. Around this time, I also started performing stand-up comedy, viewing comedy as an artistic tool for shifting our culture's perception around mental health. I started seeing this entanglement between education and culture. If one wants to shift our culture, they need to change education. Similarly, if we want to change education, we need to change the culture. The specifics weren't entirely clear to me, but my inner compass had clearly shifted. My focus moved away from being obsessed with inventing something, or even thinking technology was the answer to our problems. Instead, I wanted to go deeper to the root of our societal issues. I looked at all the suffering happening in the world, from war, discrimination, prejudice, starvation, thirst, poverty, greed, violence, etc. These were the problems of the world worth solving. While there are technology-based solutions to these problems, I saw the root causes of these problems were not technology-based. The problem was a societal and cultural problem. But how does one shift culture? The best solution I could come up with was that improving education was the way to go. This was the second time I felt a call to action to do something meaningful in education. The first time, I was too busy launching my first business. This time, however, I had the good fortune of being newly unemployed with lots of time on my hands.